Hello and welcome to Get to Know Them podcast. This is a podcast in which I'm gonna talk with some of the world's highest performers in order to learn more about them. I'm your host, Cameron Shuligoy. I hope you enjoy. This episode of the podcast is going to be a little bit special. That is because for the first time, my guest is not going to be a triathlete. My goal with this podcast was not to have only triathletes on the show, but high performers of all sorts. And today's guest, although she's not a triathlete, is definitely a high performer. She's done so many awesome and cool stuff in her life that I don't even know how I would describe her. So I'm very interested in hearing how she is gonna describe herself. But that's way too much of me talking, so I'm gonna stop now and let you enjoy my conversation with Rea Kolbl. Hello, who do we get to know today?
Rea Kolbl.
Hi Rea, it's very
Hi,
nice to meet you.
nice to meet you too.
What would you say? Who is Rea and what do you do?
Oh gosh, that's a tough question. Rea is, I think, many things, but primarily a lover of life. I'm an athlete. I race semi-professionally. Currently, I'm on the Slovenian national Skimo team, and that's kind of the sport I'm focusing on. But I'm also a coach. I coach mountain sports. I have my own business, and I'm also a daughter. I'm also a girlfriend. Um, yeah, and I think that's the short answer.
Yeah, I think that's a very short answer because I looked up a bit of your history. And even if we focus just on sports, you've done so many things that I can't even mention them all. Can you tell me how did you get into sports and then just all the stuff that you've done so far?
Yeah, so I've been an athlete all my life, basically. I was a gymnast when I was little, so I started that when I was 5, and I did gymnastics for I think 11 years, so the good part of my childhood, basically. Then I quit for a little bit. I didn't exactly quit on my own terms. It was a pretty hard time in my life. But during that time, I focused on school for a few years. So I went and studied. I actually left. I grew up in Slovenia, but I left Slovenia, went to US for college during that time. And then I never really planned to be an athlete again, but it just sort of happened that I had really good access to trails and that training was a lot of stress. So sport kind of became a way to de-stress and just become healthy again. But I soon realized I really liked trail running and that I was fairly good at it. So I started racing a little bit, but couldn't really train or race very much because of the demands of the studying that I was doing. And then sometime during my PhD, I found out about obstacle course racing. And I thought I would like it because it seemed like it sort of combined gymnastics that I did as most of my, growing up, and trail running, which I loved at the time. And I was quickly very good at it, and I really, really enjoyed it. Found the community and started racing quite a bit. And at some point, um, it was kind of like the golden age of obstacle course racing, but I was kind of making the same amount of money obstacle course racing as I was doing my PhD. And one of them was making me really happy, and the other one not so much. So after I finished my master's degree, I decided to try and be an athlete full time. So I was studying in California, and during that time, I then moved to Boulder, which is where conditions for training were a little bit better. And I was also missing the 4 seasons, so I kind of moved there to have winter again. Um, so yeah, then moving to Boulder kind of put me back into 4 seasons, and I quickly realized it's hard to run year round in the mountains. So and also growing up, I did a lot of downhill skiing, which I loved, and I couldn't quite afford a lift ticket in Colorado. But I found out I can just go uphill, so that's kind of how I got into ski touring. Was out of like not wanting to run in the winter and not wanting to pay for a ski ticket, but wanting to ski. And I quickly realized I love that sport too. And I found ski mountaineering races. And at first I was starting with the wrong equipment and I wasn't like very fast because I was making so many mistakes, but I loved the sport from the start. And so For a while, then I was racing, trail running, a little bit of obstacle racing. I started doing a little bit more technical running. I got into mountain biking because in Boulder, you kind of get into all of the sports. And I kind of got into a little bit of adventure racing during that time too, which was combining all of it. But the more time went on, the more winters became really my focus. And so about 3 years ago, I think I tried for the Skimo national team. At the time I was living in US and I also have a dual citizenship. So I managed to get on the US national team for a couple of years and I started racing World Cups. But I've realized that I really wanted to race for Slovenia, especially once the sport got into Olympics. And I kind of wanted to have a shot of that and I wanted to represent the flag of the country I grew up in. So last season I switched to be on the Slovenian national team. And as of this season, I also moved back. So now my focus is mostly winter sports. I focus on Skimo. I still raced last summer a little bit. I did sky running because I kind of realized I really enjoy the technical aspect of mountains and more like exploring than not necessarily like really fast speeds on trails anymore. But this summer, the winter was just so demanding last winter with the World Cup racing. And then I also enjoy ski mountaineering. So I did a few objectives. That just it was a lot of physical and mental fortitude required. So I took this summer off to recover and then try and shoot for a really good winter season coming up. So again, a little bit of a longer answer, but kind of condensed a lifetime of sports, basically. Now I do them all and I love them all. Just don't give me the ball.
Yeah, I'm very impressed and I have so many questions. Like, you're the jack of all trades. You've basically done everything. And when I look at everything you've done and your results, you basically excelled at everything you've done. If we go back to your obstacle racing career, I saw that you kind of became a superstar in that. How did that obstacle racing career happen? How did you choose to go, I don't know how you said it, semi-professionally or even professionally into it?
Yeah, I think it's always part talent, part hard work, part luck. And I just happened to have all of those at the same time during that time. Um, it was just in a time when like the sponsors were there, the interest was there. So in that way, there were opportunities. And I was also at a time in my life when I didn't have a lot of other stress. I could train quite well during grad school because I, could go to trails every day. The place that I lived in had trail access out the door. And then also just the gymnastics background made me good at obstacles right away without having. I mean, of course, once I realized I'm good, I started training at it. But like at my first race, I did good enough that it gave me the motivation to try and be better at the sport. And also the community was really welcoming. So, that's also part of the reason that you want to keep coming back. But yeah, I think it was all three of those combined that just happened to turn into something that I could work with and develop and be really passionate about for, quite a few years.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then you mentioned that you transitioned to other sports. How come that you decided to make this transition? Was it purely because you found some other interests, or was there something else behind it?
Yeah, so I guess like when I first started just doing like trying other sports a little bit, I didn't have the healthiest relationship with food at the time. And also that then led to many injuries, especially the last year of obstacle course racing. There was just always something that hurt. Running didn't quite feel as more. And I actually started doing like biking and other stuff a little bit before then. After I did like a 24-hour obstacle course race that I won. And Ryan Atkins, that's also an obstacle course racer, we both won together. So he kind of saw that I was good at like the suffering part. And so he was doing an adventure race that was a 7-day expedition adventure race in Fiji, and they needed a woman on their team. So he asked me if I would do it. At the time, I was only running, and the race also included mountain biking, it included water sports, it included climbing. And it just sounded like something I really wanted to try. But I had like half a year to learn all these other sports. So that's kind of how the other sports entered the equation. And then the more that, I was overdoing the running and the less that the running was feeling good, the more I was then drawn to these other sports like mountain biking, skiing in the winter, things like that. So it kind of sort of happened as out of necessity and out of just like curiosity of it. It's also just like, for me, it's really fun when I start something, because usually you're really bad at the start and the learning curve is quite steep. So it's rewarding because you put in the work and you see the progress, which maybe does not happen so much when you've done another sport for so many years now, and now there's only marginal gains. So it was all of that combined.
Yes, I completely understand that because I'm a triathlete myself, and triathlon includes three sports, and you can never truly master them all three at the same time. So there's always something to work on, and especially when you get into sport, you see a lot of progression, and I guess that's what keeps you going.
For sure.
Because,
Yeah.
yeah, you find happiness because you see that you're getting better basically day by day,
Yeah.
and that just kind of fuels the fire.
Except I tried triathlon once and I never got any better at swimming.
Yeah,
So yeah,
you and
not
me
for all the
both.
sports, but for most of them.
Okay, so this is a bit of a different question, but which sport did you enjoy the most?
Well, I think skiing. I think the Skimo racing and then ski mountaineering. I've always loved skiing. So when I was little, I grew up in Maribor, right next to a ski resort, and my mom put me on skis when I was 2. So skiing has always been part of my life, and I've always liked it. I never overdid it as a child, so maybe that's part of it. Like, I can have a really healthy relationship with the sport. Um, but I really enjoy all the technical aspects of it. I enjoy that the wilderness is just wide open to you. So like in the summer, you're restricted to trails, like you can't just like see a peak and be like, okay, well, I'll go there. In the winter, that's a lot more like having like knowledge of the snowpack and all of that to do it safely. But the opportunities of where you can go are just like so vast. And I also enjoy Skimo racing because like I feel like I haven't fulfilled my potential in that sport yet. So it's again like it's just still very rewarding work because I still see a lot of progress.
Yeah, I understand that. And before you mentioned something about Olympics, are the next Olympics in Skimo the goal you're working towards now?
Yeah, so Olympics are definitely the dream. I wouldn't call it a goal, just because it's gonna be really tough to get there. They're gonna be for the first time, Skimo is gonna be a discipline in the 2026 Olympics. But because it's a first time event, we only get 18 spots. So 18 men, 18 women get to go from the entire world, and 6 of those are reserved for sprinters, which I'm definitely not. So I'm fighting for one of the 12 spots. So first we have to qualify Slovenia, and then I have to be the best in Slovenia to go. So it's definitely going to be tough, but I do think it's possible. So I dedicated this past summer towards resting, both mentally and physically, so I can give this winter my best and then just see what happens.
Yeah, and you're definitely a tough and dedicated person. So I think that you have a very high chance that you're actually gonna make it. And I already wish you good luck in qualification.
Thank you. I'll for sure need it, and I hope I get it.
You mentioned that you've done so many things in your life, and I'm wondering what has, in your opinion, been your biggest success so far?
Oof. Um, that's a good question. I think it's not sport related. I think it's so I've had eating disorders for, almost, over 2 decades of my life. And that almost took the sport away from me. It just stopped, like competition stopped being fun. And I felt like I was training not for the love of sport anymore, but because I felt like I had to. So I think overcoming the eating disorders and finding and managing to stay in sport, but now on the terms that I think are sustainable, that are going to keep me an athlete until I'm old. I think that's the biggest success of my career, is like not dropping out in my late 20s.
Yeah, that's great to hear. I mean, I'm obviously sorry that you've had this experience. And if you don't mind, could you maybe expand a bit on these eating disorders? Because I think that this is a very popular topic nowadays and that many people struggle with it, or maybe don't even know that they struggle with it. Which disorders did you have, and how did you then recognize that you have a problem and started working towards finding a solution for it?
Yeah, I guess ever like when I was in gymnastics, um, in general, I feel like I didn't have the most healthy relationship with the food at that time. So there were always like some sort of diets that, like there was this like low carb diet, Atkins diet, or whatever was around when I was little. And there was also this like mentality that you have to be skinny to be a good gymnast. So it wasn't necessarily my coach that was like, a reason behind that. It was more just like self-driven of, I saw what other people were doing and I saw that they had success with that. So I thought I had to do the same. But I think the culture around that is changing now, which makes me happy. And then as I quit gymnastics, I didn't eat sugar for like 10 years of my childhood. So when I quit, I wanted to make up on all the sugar that I missed when I was a little child, which then leads to a lot of overeating. I gained a lot of weight. And then I just kind of yo-yoed back and forth between not eating at all and like eating, like binge eating. And then that turned once I started mountain sports and I realized that you're fighting gravity. And I found success when I, dropped some weight. I kind of got into the cycle of bulimia. And it got actually quite bad because I found that, the more I was losing weight, the faster I was, the more success I had. But what I didn't realize is that it was all in borrowed time. So eventually, I was really, really good. I was unbeatable for a year. And then the next year I had one stress fracture after another. I like was always running through pain. It just like stopped being fun. And I realized I was more envious of people who ate a cookie at the finish line than I was of the people who won. And so that's kind of when I realized it was time to make a change.
Yeah. And how did you go through this process of making a change?
Well, I guess first was like admitting I had a problem. Because for the longest that you couldn't like I was very skinny and very muscular at the time, but I didn't think like I just thought I looked good. I thought I looked like, like the way I should look, which I realize it was completely unhealthy. But like admitting that what I was doing is not sustainable and it's not healthy, and I'm like I will not have a long-term career. So that was like step one, and then step two was admitting that to somebody. So at a time I told my now ex-boyfriend, and I told my coach, and then I found help. So I like went to therapy and I worked with a nutritionist, and it took like probably 3-4 years to get back to the point where I feel like I can trust my body again, where it's, like my metabolism has gotten back to normal. And when I'm not afraid to like look at the scale anymore. So for a while I was like, I'm just not going to weigh myself because I don't know if that's going to send me spiraling. Now I'm in a place when I have a healthy relationship with food. I fuel myself well, and I'm okay with whatever body that ends up being, because I know it's like the healthiest body to do the sports that I love, and it's the strong body that will be durable and will be able to do the sports that I love for years to come.
Yeah, I'm very happy that you found a solution for your problems. And I hope that if somebody that's listening knows or finds out that they're suffering from the same problems, that they follow your advice and do what you said that you did and ask for help, because obviously you can't force your body to do something forever and the body's gonna break eventually.
Yeah, and I think that's the toughest part, is you do find success with it temporarily, but I think it's really important to keep in mind of your long-term goals, and know that there will be better successes to come afterwards.
Yes, exactly. And kind of related to this question, I'm wondering what keeps you going when the things get hard for you, either in sport or in life?
So that's another good question. I think for the most part is I know that whatever hurts in the moment hurts less than if I later on if I gave up. So for the most part it's that, like, I know that if I just stick through tough times, the good times will be worth whatever I was going through. Um, I would say in sport and in life.
Yeah, that's a very nice message. If we shift a bit from sports to a bit more general questions, I'm wondering what is the one thing that you wanted to do for a long time but just haven't done it yet?
Oh, so it's still on my bucket list. I think ski high mountains. So I really want to go to, like, I don't know, some like not really necessarily like, yeah, probably like expedition style skiing where you go somewhere and you like sleep like, tent at a high altitude and you just do objectives that maybe, aren't that well skied yet. And it's more of like an exploratory adventure. I think something like that has been on my bucket list for a while.
Okay. And when are you gonna do it?
After Olympics.
Okay.
I don't have a year set yet, but I also I feel like my skiing skills have gotten quite a bit better in the last years, and I just want to keep working on that more so that when I do have a chance to go do something like that, I can really take a full advantage of it.
Okay. That's a very nice plan.
Thank you.
If you could only eat one meal for the rest of your life, which one would it be?
Probably pizza, because you can make pizza so many different ways.
I love the answer. That's also my answer. So I think that's
Yeah.
perfect.
I briefly thought of ice cream, but I think I'd get sick of sweet for my entire life.
Yeah, probably that wouldn't work. But what is your guilty pleasure then? Is it ice cream?
Well, it's a pleasure for sure, but I wouldn't say it's guilty because I feel no guilty eating ice cream. I don't know. I feel like everything is, good in moderation. So I do a lot of things in moderation, except maybe sport.
Yeah, but that's a nice thing, a nice perspective to have.
Yeah.
And I think it's the best choice to live life, let's say, in balance.
Yeah.
And
Actually, I just thought of an answer. I'd say that long endurance days right now are my guilty pleasure because the discipline that's in the Olympics, it's 10 minutes long. So really I should be doing more short interval training, but I still do those long endurance days every now and then as my guilty pleasure.
okay, that's an interesting answer, but I like it. Tell me, what is one thing that annoys you or makes you angry?
Ooh, that's another hard one. Um, Gosh, I don't know. I think being hungry just makes me angry in general. So when I'm hungry, everything annoys me. So maybe like hunger.
Okay, that's another interesting answer, but it's also very logical.
Yeah, I get very hungry.
What would you say is your goal in life?
I think to know that I live life to my full potential, that I did all the things that I wanted to do without postponing them, without a really good reason to postpone them, and that I took the best advantage of all the opportunities that are given to me.
So do you ever have any, let's say, longer term plans, or you do just go by feel and do whatever you think is the best for you at that moment?
I have loose plans. I have dreams. Like the Olympics have been a big dream of mine since basically childhood. And kind of like the big dream is for sports to be a part of my life for the rest of my life and to be able to, keep a career at it for as long as I can. But I've kind of learned in life, I've had to start from scratch quite many times when I decided to flip flop and just do something completely different, that having a general values that I keep as my guide and then just letting the opportunities present themselves and try and take advantage of those has kind of been what's been leading me to the most happiness so far in life.
Yeah, that's a very nice approach. And even after you finish your, let's say, active sporting career, you said that you want to stay in sport. Do you maybe already have some roles that you want to get into once you stop being active?
I mean, if I could get a sponsor to be a mountaineer, I would love that. But I think realistically I'd probably go in the role of maybe like a mentor or something. Try and see, I already coach, so maybe expand my coaching business to the point where I can just live off of that eventually. Or just, yeah, I don't know if there'll be opportunities to maybe start something for kids that's snow sports oriented. I really don't know. And I've just having moved back to Slovenia, I don't even really know what the opportunities are here. So I'm kind of taking it one goal at a time. And once, Olympics, whether successful or not, are over, then I think I'll shift my attention to something else, but I don't know exactly what that will be yet.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think that you have so much experience with doing so many things, and you've already accomplished and been through so many things in life that you definitely have a lot of knowledge and a lot of experience that many people would find very valuable. So that's something that you should be very focused on passing on to other people.
Yeah, I really hope I get a chance to. I enjoy working with people and especially in the, arena of sport. So it'd be like a passion combined with a profession, which is always the ideal.
Yeah, exactly. I wanted to ask you one question, but I have this recurring theme in my podcast that I let my guest leave a question for the next upcoming guest on the show. My last guest on the show was Kelvin Amos. He's a
Hmm.
professional triathlete from Australia, and he asked the question, what's your favorite mantra?
I think what you asked me before, what gets me through tough times is like whatever hurt you're in right now hurts less than the hurt of quitting. I think that would probably be it.
Okay, that's a nice answer. And looking at your results and all your achievements, I found another quote that I found very useful and very, I don't know, just powerful. And I'm gonna read it now. And I'm wondering if you remember when you wrote it. It
Okay.
goes like this: do a lot of things that scare you, things you're not sure you can do. Then one day, when the conditions get scary and the race gets tough, you'll know that you're tougher because you've already done something harder and scarier before.
I know exactly when I wrote that. It was after a Spartan race in Tahoe. I came off of it super exhausted from the adventure race in Fiji, and it was freezing and pouring rain that was turning into snow, and we had to swim in a lake. And I've never been that cold in my life. Um, and after that, but then like I remember that I was colder than that in Fiji, and that I was okay there, so I'll be okay in Tahoe as well. So I do remember.
Yeah, I found this quote, like I said, very powerful, and I rarely write something down from my guests, but this one was worth
Oh,
writing down.
thank you.
And yeah, I because I think that this is something that many people avoid in life, but I think that it's very important that if we face these difficulties and that we put ourselves through difficult situations because inevitably life throws difficult situations at us, whether we like it or not. And if we voluntarily take on some challenges and enforce ourselves, then we're ready for whatever happens.
For sure, yeah. And I think like sport is also a great teacher for life that way. Especially like this summer was pretty tough for me for personal reasons. And I often thought in the middle I just couldn't go on and couldn't finish. And I did. So I think sport is very valuable. And I think having access to sport is really important for, human well-being in general.
Yes, I totally agree with you. And if we return back to my theme now, what is your question for the next guest that is coming on the show?
Um, okay, how about that? If you could give one advice to your younger self, what would it be?
That's a very nice question. And I'm wondering what is your answer to this question?
Um, do the sport with passion, but do it in a way where you can do it for a very long time with happiness.
And how does one know that something is sustainable and it's going to make them happy for a longer time?
I think if it's in a way that it supports your life outside of sport as well, that it builds relationship, not breaks them down, and that you can do it with joy most. Obviously, not every single day, but I think it should be joyful most days.
Okay, I love the answer. And I absolutely loved talking to you, Rea. This conversation was very enjoyable, and I think that you said so many interesting and helpful things that I hope listeners take from this conversation and apply them to their lives. I'm wondering for all those people that became interested in you and want to follow you and support you, where can they find you?
I think Instagram, I'm pretty active there, and Strava. I actually like to post a lot of pictures from my adventures there. So I think those two places.
Okay, I'm gonna put the links into the show notes so people will have no trouble finding you. And like I said,
Perfect.
it was a real pleasure talking to you, and I'm looking forward to following you and watching you how you qualify and then perform at the next Olympics.
We'll see. I'll do my best. But yeah, thank you so much for very thoughtful questions. It was a very exciting conversation for me as well.